day would never come, the confirmation hearings for Donald Trump's nominees to fill his dusty cabinet begin today. During this program, 9:30 Eastern Time, we expect the Hegseth nomination confirmation process to get underway. I was reminded this morning that over one quarter of the members of the Senate are members of the Senate Armed Services Committee, so expect a lot of big speeches from the senators before we get to the nominee. Thank you for joining. This is the morning meeting. You're looking right now at the beatific visages of Dan Turrentine and Sean Spicer. They anchored this program. I'm just here to traffic cop it. Thank you for joining, whether you're watching on two-way platform or on YouTube or X. We're delighted to have you here. As always, we don't just ask for the presumption of grace and peace, love, and understanding. Nay, we insist on it. So please do that. If you'd like to be part of the conversation here, raise your hand, electronic hand. Your physical hand means nothing to me. I'm like the claw. So please raise your hand if you'd like to be part. And if you've never raised your hand to ask a question before, today, Willy Wonka says to Charlie, is your lucky day. Please raise your hand. We'd like to have you part of it. This show, for those of you who are new here, is based on the network, television news network's morning meetings. Get it? The morning meeting, where they run through the day book of what's coming up, and then they talk about it. And that's what we'll do. And then we'll take your questions. Dan, Sean, and I couldn't be more delighted that you're here. And a reminder, if you'd like to join us in person and you're in the Washington, D.C. area on February 2nd, you have the opportunity. It's our second live event. We did one in Gotham City. Coming up February 2nd, we'll put up the graphics so you can see the details. Go to twoway.tv if you want to learn how to buy tickets. They're VIP tickets, very special experience. Dan will smile directly into your eyes. Live in Washington, D.C., Pearl Street Warehouse. More information, as I said, this is everything I already said. February 2nd, 5 p.m. Eastern, twoway.tv for more information. Please join us. All right, today, President Biden at 5:30 p.m. announces two new national monuments in California, an event he was supposed to do in California but scrubbed because of the fires. Kamala Harris, as Joe Biden would say, God love her. The vice president will be in Washington, D.C., where she will receive briefings and conduct internal meetings with staff. These meetings will be closed press. Jennifer Jacobs of CBS News reports that Vice President Harris did not invite the Vances over to tour the Naval Observatory in advance, which is a longtime tradition. I'm sure that does not sit well with almost anyone, including Sean Spicer. But that's her. I don't know what J.D. Vance or Donald Trump are doing today. Very busy day on the Hill. The Speaker of the House is so interested in conveying his views to the American people. He's having not one, but two press availabilities, one at 10 a.m. and one at 2:30 p.m. At noon, the House takes up the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act. And at 2:45, the Senate takes up the Lake and Riley Act. A lot of confusion about what's going to happen here. A lot of Democrats who voted for cloture to allow there to be a debate on the bill are expecting some amendment possibilities. Many of them say if they don't get amendments, they're not going to vote for final passage. The question is, will there be 7 Democratic senators who will vote for final passage? That appears up in the air at this hour. We will continue to follow it for you.
I will take the
C-SPAN,
over.
yeah. You think it's going to pass?
I'll go over 7.
Over 7. Okay, I think you're right, but we'll see.
I'm with you.
All right. All right. In the day book, if you don't get my Substack, you should, because you could get this incredible day book, which today includes Robin Newton of C-SPAN, remarkable person, puts together all the stuff C-SPAN's covering. You can see there's a lot going on today, including some of my favorite thing. Governors give states of the state speeches. Fantastic. Today, you got a bunch of them. New York, North Dakota, New Jersey, and Iowa, all today, and all available on C-SPAN. Brian Lamb's gift to North America. All right, guys, lots to discuss. The big news going into the Hegseth hearing for some is that the FBI did not interview the accuser in the sexual assault allegation matter, and that, according to the New York Times and others, they did not do a follow-up interview with Hegseth's second wife, even though she said she wanted to do a follow-up interview. Democrats are making much of this. Sean Spicer, he goes in, he testifies, he's confirmed, or is there some hiccups coming?
Barring anything coming out at the hearing in terms of interactions today, he testifies. I think he'll be ready to go. He seems extremely prepared. And then I think there's a vote. I will just say, just beyond that, on the process, it's funny. There's a big push. Democrats, historically, not just the Biden years, but going back, the way it's always worked is that the chairman and the ranking member get the report, and that's how it works. And now Democrats want to change the rules and say everybody should get the report. It's just, again, it's always the shoes on the other foot, depending on who's in power. But look, they asked for it. They got the report. You can't tell everyone that you want to support the FBI and then say, well, the FBI didn't do their job. I mean, that's what Democrats have been arguing for the last, the Department of Justice, don't attack institutions, don't attack this. They did their job. They gave their report. It's fair to criticize it, but this is the process.
Well, but hold on a sec. They did part of the report. I mean, the FBI usually is fairly thorough, and here there's a question about.
They're not. I have to stop you. They're not. The FBI, dirty little secret, they are horrendous at background checks. Have you ever been interviewed? Have either of you ever been interviewed for someone else's background check?
Yeah, numerous times.
Okay. Do you not find the FBI agents who show up to be totally clueless about how to ask?
Well, just to be clear, there's two types of clearances you can get. One is run by OPM, and then seniors, so DODs, a lot of those are run by OPM. The other ones, the FBI does very specific ones that are different. So they're not
good at it.
I'm not arguing that, Mark. I'm just saying that there are two versions of the.
I'm talking about the FBI.
But there is a difference between the quality of the questions asked and just doing the actual interview. And in this instance, it appears they did not do all of the interviews, and that is why people are asking. Okay, then perhaps why is that the case?
I'm saying they're not good at either. They're not good at the whole thing. I don't know why, but they're just not good at it. Put up the 105, please. Hegseth has gotten support this morning from Vice President elect Vance. You see his tweet there.
I do like the jacket lining.
By the way, I will tell you the funny part about that. Well, I will just say that I have previously used the same tailor, so I can go grab you the same jacket if you'd like to. It's funny.
Sean, obviously lots of eyes on Joni Ernst. Who's the and let's leave aside Murkowski and Collins. Who's the other Republican senator you're most closely watching to the extent there might be trouble for him? Who's the other?
I'm just trying to think on armed services, because that's what's going to matter right now. There's a big difference between being on the committee and not being on the committee. I can't. I'm just going through off the top of my head the committee list. There's not one that comes to mind on the committee.
Dan, who are you watching on or off the committee?
Yeah, I was just, I mean, on the Republican side, I still am curious about McConnell, Tillis, and the guy from Utah, in addition to Joni Ernst and the two that we mentioned. Look, I think for Democrats, I mean, you keep reading that Chuck Schumer is really imploring his members, try to rough them up a little bit. Like, I think they've been on the sidelines. They've been very quiet the last few months. I think he sees this as an opportunity to start firing the party back up and trying to score some points. And so anyone who's thinking about running for office in 2028, thinking about trying to, increase their brand, I'm just looking here, Kirsten Gillibrand, she's now the head of the DSCC, Elizabeth Warren, say no more. These are people that, at least Slotkin, that people have talked about for higher office, and let's see how they do now.
So three quick things on this, Mark. One, look, it's been said before, but it can't be understated. I mean, Pete does have a lot of experience on TV, right? So the idea of going back and forth with people quickly and interactively and knowing that a camera's on you is going to play in his favor. Number two, I would be very careful if I were a Democrat that has not served in the military attacking a highly decorated combat veteran. Be very careful what you say about this guy, because everybody's up for re-election. I get it, no matter how blue you are. But I have a feeling there might be some right-leaning response if you go after a decorated combat veteran without any substance and you've never served.
But I think, Sean,
let me just, my last thing I'll say is, and I will advise, since I tweeted it earlier this morning, I have seen some examples, but I will be paying very close attention from me how much of the attention is focused on Pete and his person versus the policies of DOD. Most of the attacks against Pete Hegseth are about his personal, which again, I'm not saying you can't, but the lack of substance from Democrats about the Department of Defense's budget, our ability to combat worldwide threats from China, North Korea, Iran, Russia, etc., our state of readiness with the military, our munition supply, our readiness with infrastructure,
and watch just as much to see if a smart Democrat who actually understands how the Pentagon works asks him questions that he can't answer, not personal ones, but
Well,
substantive.
that's why that's what I'm getting. Like the substance is going to matter, and that's why I tweeted out something earlier today about how many of the attacks. There are a few combat veterans on the House side that have started to weave in some policy things, but again, this is why I would take number 2 and number 3. If you are not, and again, this is, I'm not saying that you can't. Don't give anyone the wrong idea, but just it's always like certain people from certain ethnicities can criticize their ethnicity or your religion. You can, if you're a Catholic, you can be a little bit harder on the Pope or something, or Orthodoxy than maybe a non. I mean, that's just it's the reality of how we perceive things sometimes. So
Dan,
I
quickly,
yep.
Dan.
They'll tag team it, and I think some will hit women assault, some will hit financial mismanagement, and some will hit his leadership attributes.
Yeah. All right. Last question on this, just yes or no. Sean first. Will Republicans on the committee ask hard questions or just a bunch of softballs? Yes or no? Hard questions.
I think they'll ask substantive questions.
But will they be hard?
I mean, I think a question about policy is hard,
Yes
right?
or no,
Yes.
Sean Spicer?
Yes.
Dan, will they ask actually hard questions?
Yes.
Okay. Quick interlude 101, please. Not often that elected officials give birth to children while in office. It happens, but not so often. And we like showing cute babies. Michelle Wu, mayor of Boston, had another baby. I don't know, today, yesterday? Yesterday. There's a picture of the cute baby. Let's put it up in 3, 2, 1. Enough of the cute baby. Now, in California, our hearts still go out to all of our friends and people we don't know who've lost everything or lots of things. Tragic story. Continue to be a case where lots of scrutiny on the mayor of Los Angeles, the governor of California. On this program yesterday, the owner of the Los Angeles Times said he regretted the paper's endorsement of Mayor Bass. That's gotten a lot of attention. Mr. Caruso, who nearly beat Mayor Bass in the runoff, he's a Republican. He ran as a Democrat. He might run for mayor again. Might run for governor. The question is now on the table. Dan, are there California Republicans now who could win mayor's races or the governor's race? Or is this a short-term thing that doesn't eliminate the party's stranglehold on statewide office?
Yes, there is. And I would look for someone who is a Mr. or Mrs. Fix-It. Services, crime, homelessness. And I would watch Silicon Valley for statewide. There are a lot of billionaires up there who I think now after Elon Musk will think about getting in. So yes, I do.
Sean, you got any names in that category or just the concept?
Well, I would just say I'll extend that. I don't think they can win mayor. I think winning LA or San Francisco as a Republican is probably a pipe dream. Statewide, I agree with Dan. If you could be like Mr. Fix-It, like you're a Silicon Valley CEO or
A disruptor.
that's got some cash, yeah.
And you got to be pro-choice.
Okay. Yeah, but a pro-choice, pro-gay marriage, even if they call themselves a Democrat, a man or a woman who's otherwise extremely conservative on fiscal issues, on homelessness, on crime, that person, we all agree, could be elected in the current climate if they step forward. All right.
And watch this recall. I know this is silly how they do recalls in California, but
totally
the environment, if the timing is right, that's the key to this whole thing. You can actually recall Newsom, get somebody on the ballot quick.
All right. All right. Last night, I don't know if it was a coincidence or not, still a little bit unclear to me. The final reports from 2 special counsels came out. Jack Smith for Donald Trump and David Weiss for Hunter Biden. These 2 guys, all special counsels labor under a difficult situation because they're weird jobs. And we talked about on my show last night, criticism of the concept of these reports. These reports, I think, are an outrage. Yes, the public has a right to know, but prosecutors should be arguing in court. They shouldn't just be able to indict someone in a report with no actual rebuttal. Smith's claim that he was going to get a conviction of Donald Trump is outrageous, but it's also, of course he does. No prosecutor brings an indictment unless they think they've got the evidence. So that getting headlines, whatever. Leaving, whether you want to incorporate the final report into your answer or not, Dan, what is history's verdict going to be on these 2 guys? Separate verdicts. Or are they going to be seen as having done a good job or a bad job? Smith and Weiss. We'll start with you on Smith. Good job or bad job according to history? Smith.
I think incomplete. I think it was the capstone to the lawfare. In that it never came forward, and he puts out a report that you said, why are you putting it out?
Sean, I know what you think, but tell us anyway.
I think the big difference to me is that Weiss actually got 2 convictions. I mean, and Hunter Biden got pardoned. And for that reason, it's going to be, it's part of history in a very different way, right? President Biden pardoned his son for crimes that he was found guilty of and that was successful on behalf of. So therefore, I think that is judged very differently than Jack Smith, who never, for all of his reasons that he enumerated in the report, the bottom line is he didn't do them, and that Trump wasn't convicted of them. So therefore, it's a different circumstance.
The big mystery for me, first of all, in Smith's report, he says he disregarded the political clock, the political calendar. I can't think of a more false statement that I've ever heard a prosecutor make. I don't know why he said that. He obviously cared about the calendar because he pushed to try to get trials before the election. I think he hurt himself repeatedly by not doing what he claimed he was doing. In terms of Weiss, I don't have any explanation. And if either of you do, please speak up now. He went from slow walking the Hunter Biden case, offering him a sweetheart plea deal. The minute the plea deal disappeared, vacated by a judge, he became a bulldog and went after him hard. I think we need an explanation, and it's not in the report. Why did Weiss switch? Why did he go from being so soft on Hunter by the account of
I don't
many?
think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know that that's like you're trying to offer somebody a deal. And at some point, I mean, I know the judge, I mean, like I'm oversimplifying this a little, but at some point it's like, dude, you're not taking it. Then I have to do my job.
Yeah, but he should have been doing his job early on. I mean, as you
Well, there
know,
were a
even
lot of
if you take the
reports.
whistleblowers, if you take the whistleblowers at their word, this investigation was extremely lax and extremely deferential to Hunter up until the plea agreement disappeared, and then they were not deferential to Hunter at all. They were extremely
But
aggressive.
at that point, you can't. You've like, I've tried to give you everything I can.
But
You take,
I understand, Sean. But why was he so soft on him before the plea deal?
Well, I mean, the only thing though is there were a lot of reports at the time about the kind of contentious meetings between Hunter's lawyers and his team, kind of all spring and summer. I think it was not maybe a moment, and again, I don't know, but it seemed to be building a lot of steam in the kettle between those two camps
Yeah,
as they got closer.
that's true. But
Can I make
that was
one
right
more
before
point,
the
Mark,
deal.
on this?
Yes.
Just remember, there's a big again, this is depending on when you talk about this historically, how much of a historical nerd you're going to be. But I think there's a big difference in terms of the careers of David Weiss and Jack Smith. Jack Smith blew the government McDonald case. Like his record is a lot more checkered.
Checkered. Jinx, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Right. So I think that depending on how you're, whether you're doing this in a law class or whether you're just reading Wikipedia, there's a big difference in how they're going to be remembered. But Jack Smith is not going to go down as some kind of, legal stalwart that people are studying unless they want to look at a loser.
All right, quick question. quick. Go ahead, Dan.
Substance of that case, though, when you read it, is definitely cringeworthy.
So. Yes. Quick question for the lobbyists who are watching. This is not something that's going to be settled today. Huge debate within the Republican Party, the Trump folks, Senate and House. What are they going to do about raising the debt ceiling? Trump's gambit from last month was genius to try to get it out of the way. It didn't work. They floated putting it with California relief. They floated putting it in the budget resolution. So your best guess today, not holding you to it because it's fluid. Dan, how are they going to try to raise the debt ceiling? What will the vehicle be? What's your guess today?
It's going to be a nice lunch with Hakeem Jeffries. They don't have the votes. They're going to have to come to Democrats.
But what's the deal going to? What are Democrats going to get in return?
I think
California money.
No, please.
They won't do it.
Ask the Georgia and Florida delegations how they like that idea. That is not happening.
It's not, Sean. It's not going to be that, Sean.
Okay.
Let's see what happens the next 3 months. Let's see how conversations go. I think Democrats are going to let them come to them, not the other way around.
Listen, I'm just telling you.
Who's the beggar?
It may take a little while, but Johnson's from Louisiana. He gets the precedent that he's setting. But at the end of the day, this is also about competence and accountability. And I don't think that Louisiana or Florida have the same concerns they do about their executives that the people in California do. So
that's it. But they need money. They need money to rebuild. Georgia, North Carolina. This is like Ted Cruz and Michael Bennett. When Ted
nobody's
Cruz
questioning
slams
Brian
Colorado,
Kemp's ability to handle that. Look, this isn't, I'm not telling you that, I'm giving you my analysis. I think that this
Yeah,
will
yeah,
be,
I hear you.
and
No,
Johnson
so am I.
floated it. And I
Yeah.
don't think that it's going to be easy to walk that back, because a lot of the folks in the MAGA world and on the right have sort of embraced it and said, this isn't a bad deal. You've now tied it to an accountability thing. Maybe we can go with this. He's going to have a hard time walking this back.
All
Yeah,
right,
well, of
we'll
course,
see.
just like
What
half the harebrained ideas.
102, please. So the New York Times is reporting that Elon Musk is going to have an office in the White House complex. Sean, explain, if you're in the place where his office is going to be and you want to go to the Oval Office, how long does it take?
2 minutes. You
2 minutes.
walk out across the West Exec Ave and straight into the West Wing. The difference, by the way, I will say this: office proximity is important, but badge color is more important. And what I mean by that is, so in the White House, like in the Trump White House, a blue badge gave you free access around the West Wing. A non-blue badge means that you have to be escorted. And that's what matters more than anything else, is whether or not you can walk freely in and out of the West Wing. Now, I have no doubt in my mind that Elon Musk would have, the equivalent of a blue badge.
Yeah.
But that's what matters the most. The offices are much bigger and much more ornate and beautiful in the West, in the old executive office building, though.
That's true. Dan, my prediction, not in the New York Times story, is that he will sleep in the Lincoln bedroom. It'll become like Elon's crash pad.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, I just think to myself, if a Democrat did this and there was a Democratic, billionaire from New York City or Silicon Valley camped out overseeing everything with all these conflicts of interest, I can only imagine the ratings on Fox News every single night.
Unfortunately, Fox wasn't around when Bill Clinton was in office and sold.
Yeah, exactly.
104, please. Announced yesterday, Thursday night, Lawrence O'Donnell has an interview with Joe Biden. His last interview. I told you that the USA Today interview was the last print interview and that there was a TV interview coming. Conservatives are saying that this is going to be pre-recorded and highly edited. Rashida Jones, president of MSNBC, has stepped down. Congresswoman Fox was just named head of the Rules Committee. Those are two pieces of breaking news occurring on our watch, telling you both of them. That's a job that the speaker just gets to pick, and he picked.
By the way, that's more than just an announcement, because that's also a snub of Chip Roy, I think.
A little bit, although I don't think there was any chance he was ever going to get it.
No, but it's
so Dan, what do you think of the choice? Sean, you can work your Rules answer into your Lawrence O'Donnell answer. What do you think of the choice of Lawrence O'Donnell? Why did he get the
weakest link in the chain? I mean, they found the softest journalist who's going to be the most deferential. He's not going to get any real hard. Yes.
Lawrence? Okay. Sean, what do you think of Lawrence, the choice of Lawrence and Virginia Fox?
I didn't realize that Lawrence O'Donnell was a staff member of the White House, because that's the equivalent of what this is. It's a staff exit interview. By the way, any thought that President Biden is doing a live interview at 10 o'clock at night?
I'm going to say
I don't think there has to be any speculation of that. And highly edited. I mean, I actually wonder why you do it if that's going to happen. It makes no strategic sense. If I were him, I would have just taped a message with Corinne Jean-Pierre asking the questions and released it at 3 o'clock. This is a joke.
What do you want to say anything about Fox? I cut you off.
Virginia, it's great. I mean, it's an important committee, and I think this shows that the speaker, obviously, you still have those Freedom Caucus members on the committee, but he wanted to make sure that somebody leading that committee had his back.
Dan, you're too young to remember, but how did Joe Biden and Lawrence O'Donnell meet? What was the context?
Wasn't Lawrence O'Donnell a staffer in the U.S. Senate at the time?
Daniel Patrick Moynihan.
Yep.
And so for Joe Biden, it always comes back to being a
By the
senator.
way, kudos to Dan on that one. I think that
that was good. That was good. He didn't know who the three most recent Republican governors of California were.
I knew the last two. I did not know that.
You knew 2/3, and 2/3 is 66%, which is failing out of any school I've ever heard of.
The Hall of Fame batting average.
It is also a Hall of Fame batting average. Please raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question, because we're going to go to you soon. Last question. I saw in Politico Playbook today, which, by the way, starting soon will be written by someone from Britain. We'll talk about that. We're going to add a British host here, or presenter.
Still rooting for Hoda to join us in the morning.
Exactly. That the Secretary of the Treasury, whose name is Janet Yellen, for those of you who don't know, is going to give a big farewell speech in New York tomorrow. I consider the Secretary Yellen, who's a very distinguished person, to not be the biggest star of the Biden cabinet.
Yes.
Dan, who would you say has been the biggest star of the Biden cabinet?
Mayor Pete, because he's been present and engaged. I mean, not because he did anything substantively.
He's been president? Is that what you said?
Exactly. Like, I mean, think about it. He's the only one people are talking about for future office coming out of that cabinet.
Sean, who's the biggest star of the Biden cabinet?
I will say it was funny when you asked this question the other night on your 6 o'clock show, I think to Michael De La Rosa.
Somebody was watching.
See, just throwing that in there. It was funny. Like, I think he said the deputy national economic, whoever that was.
John Feiner, the deputy national security advisor.
And I was like, dude, you're digging deep. If that's who you're suggesting is the biggest, is the best surrogate of this administration. So
not the best surrogate. Who's the biggest star of the cabinet members? That's getting stuff done.
I mean, I think. Well, no, I don't.
Well, wait a sec. Those are two different things.
Yeah,
getting
I was
done
say,
and a media profile.
Well, however you want to define biggest star. I'm saying biggest stars. Who did the best for America? Who's the best?
Well, that's a different question. I think Pete Buttigieg did the best of getting himself out there in front of every foe. But when it actually look at the guy's record, with the nation's waterways, highways, seaways, that guy's been a disaster.
So, Sean, what's the answer?
Getting himself on TV.
What's the answer?
Maybe you're Rhode Island native.
Dude, correct. No. Dude.
Yeah,
oh my God.
Raimondo,
John.
I would actually, I'm thinking, I mean, like, what's her, Catherine Tai, the USTR, I think actually probably.
Sean, Raimondo.
No.
Oh, yes.
No.
Sean.
That's someone who's never actually done anything except for gone through Providence Airport says something like that.
Hey, handing money out isn't easy.
And number two, the man who's about to break the record for longest time. I mean, he's already broken the record, but he's about to conclude it. The longest time serving in a single cabinet post. 16 years.
Oh,
Tom
Vilsack?
Vilsack.
Yeah. All right.
And he's got the nicest office in Washington. All right. Let's bring folks in.
By the way, I will just say this, though, not to pile on, but it is sad that you can't, I mean, you cannot name somebody. There's no name that jumps out.
Why are you so down on Raimondo? The Business Roundtable loves her. They're the arbiters of all.
You're grading on a curve.
They love Raimondo. She's done a great job.
Like I said,
she's going to be president someday, but I don't know what party. All right, Michelle, welcome in. Thank you for joining.
Homeowners Association.
Please. It set a great example for everyone by not only saying where you're from, but exuding a presumption of grace and peace, love, and understanding in every syllable you utter. If you can do that, please.
I'll try my best.
What's on your mind today, Michelle?
No, I'm glad that you guys addressed the fires a little bit and sort of the politics that might play out in the coming years. I wanted to point out just one thing I've sort of observed in the media, which I find very interesting. The media difference with Hurricane Helene. And I feel like the coverage was it was quite different. This destruction in kind of both regions, absolutely decimated, horrible, and very tragic. But the loss of life, again, I don't want to downplay this at all, but we still don't actually know the amount of, the loss of life in North Carolina. And I feel like we need to talk about that more, as well as some of the tragedy that's going on in LA. So, and I think there are many people here on this call who are, know somebody in either of those regions or both who have been affected by it, myself included. So I do think that it's something I would like to, see the media draw some more attention to. So that's point one. Point two, with these sort of super high risk, low frequency events with natural disasters and so forth, I think it is very interesting to contrast the response between DeSantis and Newsom. We're all doing that in our heads and we're talking about it out loud. And I think there was a North Carolina governor who was on last week in the evening sort of mentioning this as well. But DeSantis did things like, when it comes to a hurricane, somewhat predictable event, it's going to happen at some point, just not when. He pre-stationed electrical workers on site. He had contingency plans. He was very responsive. He's swift. He's communicative. He's accountable. And I feel like DeSantis has been, or Newsom has been running around sort of saying, I want answers. I'm going to go on Pod Save America instead of actually be available to the people and to actually be a leader. Talking just painfully about how he had embers in his hair, his perfectly slicked back hair. It's just such a bad optic on so many levels. And so 2 points. One is, to me, this really, if you look at the contrast of the two governors of two very big populated states, to me, this propels DeSantis forward. Like, I want him in the federal government somewhere. I want his competency, his leadership. I liked him as a presidential candidate. I didn't vote for him, and he did, but that's beside the point. But to me, that just makes, DeSantis look so much better in comparison. But the question that I sort of have is, do you guys actually think that, like, how are the tides going to actually shift in the Republican direction at all, or an independent direction in what is a single party state? I know you touched on it, but, is this something that'll actually get some traction in, will California, politicians actually be more accountable to some of the decisions that they're making and some of the fallout that's occurred?
All right, Michelle, lots of great points. Thank you for that. And Sean, address certainly whichever of those pieces you want. We're going to put up some live video of Pete Hegseth in the hearing room posing for photos while you talk, Sean. But go ahead.
I'd just say, Michelle, I think it's a great question, a great discussion. It's unfortunate that you have to, we have to have this while people are still suffering. And so that's the caveat. I think that also drove why so much attention came from yesterday's show with Dr. Sun Sheng. It's that because people are like contrasting how this is being handled. And there is a degree of competence and accountability that needs to come. And I will say this, there is a difference. You're not questioning Brian Kemp's competence when it comes to how he handled issues. And I would say that to some degree in North Carolina is true. It's not partisan. Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass have been abysmal failures when it comes to addressing the needs and getting ahead of a predictable event. There's going to be another earthquake, unfortunately. There will be another fire. And these guys were woefully unprepared. And it's not like Gavin Newsom's first day in office. The guy was a mayor. He was lieutenant governor. He was governor. I mean, like, the idea that this is not on the top of mind, because it's not just LA that's affected. I mean, you look at the breadth and depth of these fires, right? The idea that the governor of California is running around saying, I'm going to call for an investigation. What the hell have you been doing your entire time? And I think that that's the contrast with DeSantis. I've got family. I mean, some of you, when you watch Florida, those guys are ready before, during, after. And so I think there's just a massive contrast that we can now all see. And the idea of Karen Bass's qualifications and competence for this office are on full display. And again, I feel bad for so many people who are living with it. I was listening to, I think it was the Today Show this morning, and they were talking about what we talked about yesterday. Where do these people go? Housing options for them. And there's, only so many hotel rooms and emergency, but it's not like 2 nights, right? I mean, you're thinking to yourself, I cannot fathom the idea of thinking to myself, where am I staying? Not just next week, but what am I doing next month? Where's my place of work? Where are my kids going to go to school? Everything's gone. That's just mind boggling. And I just, it sucks to have a conversation about incompetence from elected officials, but at the same time, we have to do it.
Yeah, I'll just briefly say 2 things here. One
of the dais
Florida,
there, it seems that only a week or 2 ago I was sitting in a very.
You can take
Florida. There's a famous thing in 1992 when Hurricane Andrew hit, and the governor, Democrat Lawton Childs, and George H.W. Bush's White House got into a big fight over who was responsible for what. And when Jeb Bush then won, he made a point that he was going to be ready for hurricanes, and he was not going to lose the kind of public relations war. And ever since then, Florida has been a model of how to prepare for natural disasters and other things, particularly things like hurricanes that are coming. The second thing I'll just say about California is, and I asked the doctor this yesterday, there's a kind of and this is a bad analogy, kind of a tinder that's beginning to burn in California over crime and homelessness and all the regulations that make business development and other things hard. The tax rate, right? All the people leaving for Texas and Arizona and Florida. And I think this is just another piece of that now, that the kind of, okay, you're career government people. The one thing you should do then is be competent at government, being there for me. And everyone, to Sean's point, is looking at all these elected officials, pointing the finger at everybody else. Like, I'm not responsible. Like, woe is me. I'm trying my best, but this is a really hard situation. And so I think all the seeds are there if the Republicans can get their act together, for Republicans to be competitive again. Maybe this is what immigration was to Pete Wilson and the Republican Party back in the early 90s, where they, slipped and have not been able to get back. So we'll just have to see.
Dan, I think the point you're bringing up, by the way, is so critical. I wanted to get to that with Patrick yesterday. The regulations, I mean, the crime, all that, huge, right? But also, how do you rebuild? You hear the stories. Bill Maher talks about trying to put a solar panel on his house. This is well before this happened. Other people, I was listening to some story about some actor that had to have a double hulled, like it's an oil tanker, for their swimming pool in case. I mean, like, if they don't address regulatory issues, how do you ever rebuild, right? How do you rebuild that? And that's just normal building. Never mind in the aftermath of a tragedy like this, where you want to happen quickly and you need to do it responsibly. Like, I mean, again, how Patrick was talking about some of the flame retardant resistance that could be on roofs. Like, these guys better get their act together quick, or all these people are gone and not coming back.
Michelle, thank you. Really grateful to you. Great questions. Love having you on. Please come back regularly. We'll take a quick look at the hearing. Chairman Wicker is in the chair. Pete Hegseth, you can't see it there because they've pushed in, but he's flanked by Norm Coleman, who's been one of his Sherpas, the former senator from Minnesota, Pete Hegseth's home state, who's presenting him to senators. We'll introduce him to the committee. And then on his other side is Congressman Waltz from Florida, who is going to become the national security advisor in a week. And those will be the two who make statements on behalf of the nominee. You'll see a lot of opening statements here, and we'll keep monitoring it, but I don't suspect we'll see much news before we go off the air. Okay, you can take that down. Let's go back to folks' questions. And I want to bring in Mr. Britt. Mr. Britt, welcome in. Tell folks where you are and what's on your mind, please. I'm sorry, you got to unmute.
Oh, you're muted.
My fault.
Where is that Philadelphia?
No, Richmond, Virginia.
Okay.
Do you go to Pearly? Do you ever go to Pearly's for brunch?
Yes, it's amazing.
It's an amazing place. Yeah.
Hey, real quick, Douglas, before we get into it, you talk about competence in government. Tell us about your water issues down there.
Yeah, we got upstaged by LA's, a more dramatic and ongoing incident. But yeah, 6 days last week under a boil water advisory, just because of, it started with a power outage we had more of a slush storm. It was kind of the wintry mix thing. And so there was a power outage where the water treatment facility was. And so then there's just cascading failures after that. All the fail-safe mechanisms were it's safe to bet that they'll fail. And so it was just one thing after another, and I feel badly for the new mayor that he'd basically been in office about a week, so he's not Karen Bass in this situation, but it's definitely it's on my mind, because I was thinking, to Dan's point about there's a lane for a Republican who can say I'm running as Mr. Fix-It. How about in Democratic primaries? Is there a lane for a Democrat to run as a Mr. Fix-It, or is that just still kind of unthinkable? Like,
or Ms. Fix-It.
Or Ms. Fix-It, yes. Or Mix Fix-It, whatever. But it's definitely, I just feel like it's more and more the story that it's like, okay, you just sort of assume that things are going to be badly run in democratic jurisdictions, and that's just like, oh well, part of the deal. And I'm someone who was 4-time Obama voter, meaning twice in the primaries, twice in the general election, and held my nose for Hillary, held my nose for Biden, and this time voted for Trump. Because it's just kind of too much.
Did you vote for Glenn Youngkin or Terry McAuliffe?
I actually did not vote for either because I was living in Texas. I just moved to Richmond in February, so basically I'm coming up on a year of being here.
Got it. Well, good choice. It's a lovely city. Did you want to talk about the competency issues, or did you have something else in your mind?
Well, yeah, but I was curious. Yeah, like, is there? Since the Democrats are doing this kind of post-mortem-y stuff now, it seems like a great opportunity to be like, it seems like a lane could open up for someone who's just like, okay, we're the competent Democrats. We're the ones who, who get the basics right in terms of our, we've nailed down all the basic services in our jurisdiction. Everything works, everything runs. And then we worry about the nice to haves, like I feel like that's kind of gotten reversed. And so is there any appetite for that, that you've observed?
Dan.
Yeah, I hope so. The challenge in California is getting through the primary. And that is one, they're jungle primaries, so it's the top two vote getters. But the big issue out there is just all the interest groups and all the career politicians that just wait and wait and wait for the chance to move up the next rung on the ladder. And so I would love it if that could happen. It's a very expensive state. To me, Michael Bloomberg was the great technocrat of New York City, where he just brought in great people and didn't care whose idea it was. If it works and it makes the services better, more efficient, like, I'll take it and let's do it. But I don't know if that person exists in California right now that could get through a Democratic primary.
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, in both sides, just to make it clear, I think the people who vote in a primary who are activists are the activists. They're the people who care about those issues that drive the ideology on the far ends of both parties. So it's hard to see somebody coming in and saying, although I will say, it also depends on if it's a multi-way primary. I mean, Glenn Youngkin, when he ran in Virginia, there was definitely some people who outflanked him when it came to issues, but he really came in. And I mean, he also had the resources. To Dan's point about Bloomberg, when he rented the Republican Party in New York, equally had the resources to come in and just overwhelm people. And Youngkin did that similarly in Virginia in the primary. It was a firehouse primary, but he came in and I think if you have that kind of a person who has enough money that they can buy the right people and get the ads and do the campaign, it's possible, but it has to probably be a multi-way primary.
But one thing I would look at, it doesn't have to just be money, because they're saying this in the chat. Andrew Cuomo may run for mayor of New York. He has a lot of scar tissue. He left, the governor's office kind of not in disgrace, but with a lot of questions. He is leading, I think, because he is seen as one tough SOB who gets stuff done. He's not, not the nicest guy. People have a lot of bad things to say about him, but everyone is in New York, or a lot of people in New York are looking at him that he could break China and make it work.
But also, to your point, like, he may not have a lot of personal money, Dan, but that guy has access to money, and that's not the same. But it's, you might not be flying private, but you're flying first class.
So Steve Bannon, who said his goal was to keep Elon Musk out of the White House, if the New York Times reporting is correct, it looks like he's going to fail. This morning at a Politico forum at Union Station, said Musk doesn't really have all that much power. He's not really influencing things. Now that could be a prelude to surrender, because he knows he's getting in the building. So now he's going to play it down. Would be Bannon-esque.
You know what though, Mark? There's a difference though between surrender and living to fight another day. And I don't think Bannon this is the last word or the last effort to drive Musk out.
Yeah, I will say this though, there's a big difference having, seen Bannon operate in the White House and others but like, it's one thing to be on the outside or in a campaign. It's another thing to be inside government and trying to get things done. Yep. And so it's one for Elon to be walking around Mar-a-Lago and making pronunciations and then going inside and having the staff secretary say, oh, actually, we need to do it this way and it needs to flow. Like, there are certain aspects of government that just have to happen the way they do to implement change. And so how Elon handles that as a guy that's used to just saying things and having them done might be an interesting dynamic.
Totally agree. All right, there are two kinds of people in America. There are those who prefer Greg Kelly with makeup on and his hair brushed, and there are those who prefer Greg Kelly with his hair in what I call the as you like it style. Greg Kelly, welcome back to the morning meeting. I bet you want to talk about Pete Hegseth.
Well, it is on television right now, and I have my first reaction is it's just totally and utterly preposterous that this is happening. The man has been blackmailed, and everybody knows it. I noticed that at first I thought Marsha Blackburn was his mother, but it's not. She's not there. The mother isn't there. Anybody who looks at that email. So it's a preposterous situation. And senators who are afraid of being primaried, like in 2 years, I thought the Senate was designed by our founding fathers to like withstand that kind of pressure. So it's offensive to me that senators who really are supposed to not be reactive to the wild passions of the moment could be intimidated at this moment. And one last thing I'll say, and it's to Sean actually, I think that after Iraq and Afghanistan, and after military officials, secretaries of defense, many generals went up on Capitol Hill and lied repeatedly about how well everything was going, when everything, right up until the day we lost. I personally love it when people without military backgrounds challenge defense officials in or out of uniform. Those days are over. They work for us. They work for the people. After Milley's treachery, I actually think one of Matt Gaetz's proudest moments was when he just, I've never seen anyone call on the carpet a general like Matt Gaetz did, who has no military experience. The idea that you're supposed to have military experience or you can't say certain things, I hope those days are over or coming to an end, because and anyway, if this guy gets confirmed, nothing is everything is crazy. The world has gone mad.
Sean.
Greg, as you know, I think I was making a point that if you're on the left and you lack credentials, that you're opening yourself up for attacks on the right. I'm not saying, I was explaining and analyzing things. I think.
No, I know, what? Yes, I agree with you, but I hope that they have the courage to withstand that, because that, I believe, is now passe.
Yeah.
And
well, it'll also depend on whether or not the people respond as I suggested. I mean, my guess is that people in MAGA world will run to Pete's defense and say, how dare you attack him? You blah, 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 blah. And he has done this. I mean, that's from a PR perspective, that's how I would handle it.
Yeah. Sean's point's right from a tactical and PR perspective. But Greg, the point you made is extremely important for America. Civilians must ask tough questions of people in military, even if they've not served themselves. That is a bedrock fundamental. And I know you're concerned with some of the recent behavior of people in uniform, but this is true since the founding of the republic. We have to have aggressive civilian questioning of people in uniform, or the system doesn't
Yeah,
work.
and just so I'm not, I'm not by any means not suggesting that. I am, to your point,
Yeah,
I frame this from a PR standpoint and a tactical standpoint, how one side is going to look at the other, not what we need to do as a country. I think there obviously everybody needs to be held accountable, regardless of your status or your position. But I just, to give people an understanding of, if you're a Democratic senator, you, in the back of your head, you're thinking to myself, how do I do this so that I don't get crushed?
well, if you're a Republican senator as well, and I mean, and you're right. That's the swampy way, and people, image conscious people, look at things, and not. You're giving me a reality, Sean, but so is Mark. And I hope that we go in the direction that Mark is talking about.
I mean, you look at what Joni Ernst did. I mean, we talked about this on the show. Charlie Kirk and others savaged her. She goes back to Iowa the next day, comes out and says, we had a great conversation. I mean, basically, they are not immune to criticism, regardless of party. So I think you're right. It transcends lines.
But but last thing, they should be a little bit, the idea, I'll be very curious how Joni Ernst actually votes, because if she is as freaked out that she's going to be primaried in 2 years, that says to me and most people who don't have 2-year job security that she's got job security for 2 years. Yeah. Most people don't have 2 weeks. Yeah. And it's maddening that a United States senator would be thinking so selfishly about themselves when they know the right thing for the country is possibly the hard thing politically.
Certainly no one who hosts a cable news show has any job security unless they've got stellar ratings like a Greg Kelly. So some news from the hearing. They've announced that the vote on the Armed Services vote will be Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern time. Monday is Inauguration Day. Greg, one close observer texted me to say he thinks this means they know he doesn't have the votes and they want to let it die on a busy news day.
Or they pull it on Sunday night and just let it, be overwhelmed the next morning. I will say, too, for what it's worth, the DNC sends out press talking points every day. Since November 5th, they've been very vanilla. They are full guns blazing. The headline is Hegseth is unfit and unqualified. And
I will say,
yeah, they're all in right now.
If this, look, I've been very clear that I think based on the current political and cultural environment that we live in, that Trump is coming into this with a very different mindset. But if Hegseth goes down and they savage him, I think that this starts to chip away at my theory.
But Sean, if he goes down, it's not going to be because Democrats savage him. It's because
Republicans.
Republicans
Yeah,
thought he was he was unfit.
right.
But they're not. But they're not. I mean, Democrats are trying to launch a pressure campaign, but that's not what it's about. I think no votes are going to be people who share Greg Kelly's view that he's unfit for the job.
I didn't say that. I'm just saying I think it changes once Trump sees a chink in the armor that says my own team's not with me. I think that changes his overall mindset real quick.
Yep.
The only reason I actually somewhat disagree is I think if you just look to Greg's point, the only reason for him is this idea of like, we got to get rid of DEI in the military. Every other box, he's bad. I mean, his management, his financial leadership is terrible. His record is awful. You never put somebody in charge of this. I think Trump moves on and doesn't think about it twice.
Yeah. All right, Greg, anything else you want to say before we kiss you goodbye metaphorically?
No, I enjoy it.
Can I ask Greg or any of you?
Yeah.
I mean, Mark asked this question earlier. Like, okay, so because the first vote is armed services, right? You got to get out before you get to the floor. You'd have to see something go down either there or know that you have more than 3 no votes on the floor. Who's the surprise vote?
Oh, I think look, if I had to bet my own money, I think they have more than enough votes to knock this down.
I think so too.
And a lot of this it's still kind of freaking me out that it's happening, but in my heart of hearts, I kind of know, and I've been following this closely, that they have, like, I don't know, 6, 7 votes.
I agree.
Watching it happen, you start to wonder, and you see all those Navy SEALs out there, which is another kind of like a grotesque photo op nonsense, like as if that's representative of the military. Anybody can do that. The military is like a state. There's so many people there, and you can pick and choose and get anybody to advocate just about anything you want. You can find a subset of the military to do that. And the idea that this is somehow representative of military opinion is, well, offensive to me.
Yeah. Sean, I'd urge you to look at the accounting firm of Ernst and Young. Ernst and Young, if you're wondering.
I will say
Young
this,
of Indiana. I bet Young of Indiana, if there's a movement to vote no.
I will say this. It's interesting because we've talked about how textbook this confirmation has been in terms of how Pete came out of the gate and then brought his mom onto Fox, his wife in the background, how he's I mean, like, and it's sort of like, you know, if from an outsider looking in the last few days, you'd say, okay, he's flowing into that hearing on a nice wave. What changed? Did they not read the room right? Did they not have their whip count right? I mean, because if Greg's right, if you're right, that suggests that the team really didn't have their act together in the way that they should.
I disagree. I'm not as sure as Greg, but here's what I think happened. I think all the senators who were making negative noises saw what was happening to Joni Ernst, including Joni Ernst, and said, we don't want to spend Christmas being attacked by MAGA. So we're just going to say we support the process, let him go forward. But they continue to say, for various reasons, some blackmail, some personal conduct, some not qualified for the job, some drinking. They just said, when the time comes and we have to actually tell the Trump people what we're doing, seven or so of us are just no. We just don't think he's the right person. I'm not sure, but nothing that I'm positing is inconsistent with what I see before my eyes.
Right. The chat is all asking, is DeSantis then, if that happens, is he no?
Okay. Ship has sailed. It's probably Greg Kelly. It's probably ironically Greg Kelly.
Yeah. I will say this though. But I guess my broader question mark was just real quick is that if you're the team, I agree with your tactic from a Senate standpoint. Those guys are punting and saying, let's let the process, give them a hearing, right? They're buying time. But the point is, did his team not read the room right?
They did. They knew exactly what was happening. Not exactly. They knew 80% of what was happening. But their job, the team's job, was to get him a hearing. The team's job was to say, get him a hearing, let him try to build public support, let him try to convince these skeptical Republican senators he can do it. And they got that. And I don't think they're under any illusions. He's got to win it at the hearing. And that doesn't mean holding.
The idea, by the way, though, I'll tell you this, going into day one without a confirmed SecDef is a problem. I agree with you, but you know what they're going to say? The people who want to vote no, we told you. You wanted to see it through. But that's why I'm saying I think that the team will suddenly get exposed for not. I mean, like at some point they have an obligation to go to the president and say, Mr. President, we got him the hearing, but it's not going to work. That's the. I mean, the Gates team, or Gates or who. I mean, how that plays out. You know, somebody said to him, it's not going to work, and they were able to pivot. They got Pam in there, and she's going to. But like his team let him down if this plays out the way you guys suggest.
Yeah, he might. I'm not 100% sure by any means, but I think it's possible. As I said, I see nothing inconsistent with that point of view. And I'll continue to say, there's some of his biggest boosters have said since December rather, they don't think he's going to make it. They want him to, but they don't think he is. Greg Kelly, if we give you some rice-a-roni, will you promise to come back?
The San Francisco treat?
That's the one. Of course. All right. Thank you for joining us as always. Appreciate it. Never brush your hair. I love you like that. All right. A little news. Jake Sherman, who writes for Punchbowl, used to write for Politico. He's not British, so they booted him out. He has the uncanny ability to get members to text things verbatim outside of closed meetings, to such an extent that sometimes the Republican House members, confiscate everybody's phones. The Democrats don't do that. So here's what Hakeem Jeffries just said in a closed Democratic caucus meeting about the concept, Sean, of tying California disaster relief to a raise of the debt ceiling. Quote, "It is unconscionable, unacceptable, un-American to try to impose a single condition on providing disaster assistance to Americans in need." Doesn't sound to me, Sean, like he's open to that deal.
You know, it sounds like, well, first of all, it's not a deal. If you're the California delegation, you want to vote no on that. It sounds like that guy, you remember the lawyer on Seinfeld? It's outrageous. It's repugnant. It sounds like somebody wrote his talking points for him. But I don't really care what Hakeem says. The bottom line is you need to tell me the Democratic caucus. I mean, the Democratic California delegation is going to vote no.
They're pretty deferential to their leader. All right. The two-way community is everything to this platform, to this program. We're so grateful to you.
Thank you, by the way, to the community.
Jackie Childs.
Say again?
Jackie Childs is
the chat is reminding me it's Jackie Childs.
Yes.
The two-way community does things like the name Seinfeld characters like that. We put together a little video in honor of you all and your appreciation for the platform. We want to share it with you now. I believe this is a North American world premiere. It's already been in Singapore, but this is it for North America. Roll the tape.
This platform, it's unlike anything else that's out there.
I love your show.
It's the best living show out there.
I'm an addict. I am addicted to watching you guys.
You discovered you were about 2 weeks before the election. Your platform is still staying.
My perception and how I've been talking to people post-election has changed.
Really excellent insights across the board, from the Democrats, Republicans.
This program today is a great illustration of how phenomenal your program is.
I know it's said many times, but there's really nothing like it.
Love the show. The medium is the message.
Peace, love, and understanding.
This platform is amazing.
Let me tell you how grateful I am for the platform.
I think you do a fantastic job of moderating.
The platform is really unique.
I love the platform. I love all three of you.
That's awesome.
So, some idea of how we're doing. We continue to grow. We ask you to continue to spread the word for two-way so more people can enjoy it, and we can grow bigger and bigger and start swallowing up tiny little media entities like Spinco and other properties that we could acquire. Always very grateful to you. Remember, you can come join us in person if you're in the Washington, D.C. area, or perhaps planning an early cherry blossom trip. February 2nd, go to twoway.tv to learn more about how to buy tickets for that live event, which we continue to press because we don't want you to be disappointed. Eventually, we're going to sell out. So please, buy your tickets today. Go to twoway.tv. Sean, Dan, I'm turning right over to the Hexeth hearings because I've only been able to listen through this year, and I've missed a fair amount, so I'm eager to watch. Will you gentlemen be watching?
100%.
100%.
Yes.
See everybody, 6 o'clock tonight, Eastern time. I'll be in a different city, but reporting on the Hexeth hearings. We're going to have clip after clip after clip, expert commentary, X's and O's, John Madden style breakdown of the whole thing. And then 9 a.m. tomorrow, this exact group will reconvene. Hopefully you'll join us back and some new people. We'll get more questions in. So grateful to you. Good night. Good luck. Be well. Be safe. See you at the Hegseth hearings.